y'all's opinion on it? Whatever your opinion is, I'm on the other side. Strongly. Doesn't matter what you say, I'm going to take the other side. So
I guess you could say it's like those people who...
You don't have a uterus, shut up. Sorry, someone told me that. Go ahead.
It's like some people think about it intellectually and then some others just like out of emotion, you know?
Yeah. So what would be the intellectual position of how people talk about it?
I guess they would say like, oh, like I have my own choice, like my right to take the abortion if I want to. And then the other one's like out of pure emotion, that's like the human life that you're getting rid of. Like they say like, no, you can't do that to like a baby or stuff like that.
And that's important and that's really important for us to understand. That's why I kind of figured that's what would come up, that issue. And that's one of the reasons I bring it up. Sorry. So a friend of mine recently, said, well, men shouldn't have opinions about it. And I said, excuse me, are you saying that men can't have babies? You are literally Hitler if you believe that. She's big on trans rights. But there's almost nothing that's worth talking about that isn't going to be passion-inspiring and exciting. But we're so afraid of offending. And I wonder why it has to be so offensive. And I think that a lot of the offense is going to be in how we choose to take these things. And I'll give you a heads up. It's an issue I was interested in as an undergraduate. And there are books and volumes written about arguments about this. It's a really interesting argument. And one of the things I find so interesting about it is that there doesn't seem to be a middle ground. There is one, and I'll tell you what it is, but there doesn't seem to be a middle ground. But it's like we go so far to demonize the other side, regardless of what side you're on. So, for example, if you're someone let's say you're someone who's against abortion. Well, we'll put this dichotomy off to the side, and we'll say pro-abortion and anti-abortion. And I know that people will get upset about using this characterization, but it's accurate. Some people are in favor of it, and some people are against it. And we'll say, well, I'm not really in favor of it, I just want it to be legal. You're in favor of it. Don't shy away from your position. If that's your position, don't shy away from it. Same with this. If that's your position, don't shy away from it, whatever it is. We don't really get anywhere by softening things and making things less clear. We get somewhere by making things clear. So people who are in favor of abortion, why? And that doesn't mean you have to be, but I'm asking why. Knowing what you know, why would people be in favor of it?
Because we don't have financial security to take care of a child.
Okay. So, I'll just say what you said. No financial security. In other words, babies be expensive. What else? Yeah.
People get abused.
Like sexually abused?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like a traumatic event.
We'll call victim of sexual abuse. That's sexual abuse. And then from there, it would be traumatic. Okay. What else? Yeah.
Possible pregnancy issues?
Like health, you mean like?
Oh, like.
Like sometimes it's like a risk for the mother to be pregnant.
What kind of a risk?
Like they could die,
Okay,
or like
so-
the baby could die, or the mother and the baby could die.
You can't have that baby die. We're going to abort. The health risk. So we'll say health risk to, we'll just leave it at health risk. So I'm going to show all the sides, and I'm going to make fun of them all, so just to give you a heads up. Prepare to be offended. What else? Other reasons?
Yeah, those are like the only three I've ever heard of.
Oh, not mine. Oh shit, I'll do that.
What was it?
What? They're an accident. I know they're not even sure. That's what I mean. That's what I'm doing now, plan. Yeah. That's a different
Whoops. Okay. So, lack of financial security, so the person can be a victim of sexual assault, so therefore it'd be traumatic. A health risk, unplanned, oopsie. Anything else? Okay. So now, you don't have to answer it, but I would ask you, if these are the positions that you want, can you see what arguments people would make against these? Not that you agree with their arguments, but could you see why how they'd argue against these things? Yeah. No financial security, we might say, well, babies are expensive. So if that's the case, then does that mean that if you have like a 2-year-old and mom can't afford the 2-year-old, she should just be able to drown him? I mean, 2-year-olds are expensive. Maybe not. Well, we'll put that one on the
I
back.
thought we were going to take it more a smarter route, like, oh, you have so many assistants.
Should have done this 2 years ago. Well, actually, it'll make more sense if I do this after. So now, the people who are against abortion, why do you think they're against abortion?
Maybe they want to get an abortion themselves.
They're just jealous of people who get abortion.
I don't know.
Well, people who are against, it's important for us to understand, yeah.
Because it also, like, abortions also cause health risks.
Okay. It also causes health risks. And that would be physical and mental, so more physical and psychological. We'll put them both into the same category. What else? Yeah.
Religion.
Religion. And so when you say that, like, what about religion specifically? Because I hear this from a lot, it's really important to know what we mean by this.
Isn't there like any surgical operations or something?
Any what?
Surgical operations? Like some certain things?
It like goes against your religion.
Yeah, there's certain churches like Seventh-day Adventists. There are certain branches of Christianity that will say, you shouldn't have surgery. You're not supposed to get blood transfusions without church. Those are pretty rare, even then. No, really, I've seen those where they're like, kids are dying and they'll say, well, we're going to pray on this.
Yeah.
Yeah, if the kid needs some vitamin C, well, we'll see if God sends it. He did. It's right here in a pill. Have him take it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that's so clear. So this is one that I hear a lot, but there's one that we're missing from here, which is like pretty much the only one that really.
Killing a life.
Yeah. So the anti-abortion thing is that they think they believe that fetuses are human beings.
Yeah, my dad just posted like a video of it yesterday.
Oh, yeah, I saw one too. Not yesterday.
So, and this is pretty much the one that it all hinges on. So when people say things like, oh, religion, that's the one that they're talking about. Because the religion one is the one that informs the idea. In other words, it isn't just like the Catholic Church doesn't just, it's not in the Bible that says do not abort. What the Bible and the Quran and what the Upanishads and all these religions say is that essentially that people are, that fetuses are people from, we become who we are from the moment of conception. So, like for example, in Psalms, David writes that you knew me before my birth. So the idea is that the religions teach that fetuses are human beings. It isn't that the religions themselves say, in the books, no to abortion. They're saying you can't abort because it's murder because a fetus is a human being. So it's an important thing. So it's almost like we're removing a step from it by calling it this because rhetorically it works. But this is actually what it's about. So, yeah.
But I was just gonna say that I feel like the thing that the two arguments have in common is that it could be unsafe because if it's illegal, people are gonna try to do it on their own. And then like if it's legal, there comes like the health risks after. So I feel like that's the one thing that they have in common.
Okay, so the health thing would be common. So that would be the one thing. But see, we have a problem though. If we use the argument of, well, people are going to do it anyway, so we should make it legal. People are going to mainline heroin, so we should just make it legal anyway, right? We should make it safe, legal, and safe. Safe, legal, and rare. We should offer it at places in the corner, cocaine. People are going to do it anyway. Murder, they're going to do it anyway. We just got to make them be safe when they do it. It's a weird thing when we say, well, you know what, people are going to behave badly or well, whichever way you want to look at it, either way. So let's just provide the service so that people can do their behavior safely. And by the way, there is an argument for that. Like the libertarians will argue that. And if you said to a libertarian, and you probably know libertarians, well, so we should just make heroin and cocaine available everywhere, they would say, yeah, it's a liberty issue. We should have a one-stop shop. Get your abortion and heroin at the same place. There's a market there.
Like a 7-Eleven.
Yeah, exactly, 7-Eleven. So they would say yes to something like that. But my point is just to consider that question. In other words, where else in the world do we say that? Where else do we apply that argument of, if it's going to be, that people are going to do it anyway, let's just help people do it. By the way, I'm not saying it doesn't exist anymore. I'm just asking you where else that exists. So the reason I was saying that I think that it's a very difficult issue is because of this right here. Because you've got one side that says a fetus is a human being. You've got this one side over here that says a fetus is not a human being. So now, how do you bridge that? Because that becomes a really difficult thing. The people who are over here understand what they're doing. They believe that they're saving the lives of babies. And since they really genuinely believe that, why are we so pissed off at them? The people who are over here, they don't believe they're killing babies. They believe they're having a surgical procedure, the same way that you have like a cyst removed. Why are we so pissed off at them for just having a medical procedure? You know, it just doesn't make any sense. Do you think that people really wake up in the morning and say, how can I control women's bodies today? How can I take away their personal autonomy? Mwah! Do you think that people really sit here and go, you know what? I'm going to kill some babies today. You know, let's get some babies dead. Do you really think that that's what both these two sides are thinking? But we treat them that way. You know, I mean, the people who are over here, if you're over here, I mean, be kind enough to them, because at least understand, even if you disagree with them, they're not trying, you know, they think that they're saving babies' lives. Would you be pissed off if somebody opened up a hospital, like in, I don't know, in Ukraine specifically to help children? Because that's what they're kind of, in their minds, they're doing something tantamount to that. Would you go and protest outside of a clinic where people are having like cysts removed, like basic medical procedures, the kidneys that have gone bad? Would you go out there and say, you know, hands off their kidneys? Would you go out there and like hold up signs of the medical procedures of kidneys being removed to try to stop people from having their kidneys removed? You know, these two sides. The problem is that we treat each other like caricatures. You know, they're saying you just want to kill babies. They're saying you just want to control people's bodies. No, it's not that. Both sides are not as evil as the other one is portraying the other one to be. How do you win that argument? Well, it really comes down to something like this. What is it? Is the fetus a human being, or is it not? If it's not a human being, well, if it's a human being, then no justification for killing it is ever good enough. Is there any other crime that, like, if your father commits a crime, when would we ever punish you for the crime that your father committed? If your dad steals a car and they can't catch your dad, or even if they do catch your dad, do they get to throw you in prison also, or execute you as well? Of course not. It's a weird thing. And so, but then that becomes that goes on that emotional side, by the way. Now, so then that means you have to force them to live out that traumatic experience all over again. I don't know, if it's a baby, what other circumstances would you be okay with killing a baby? Again, if it's a medical procedure and it carries along all these health risks and the woman could die, Are you okay with going in there and telling the woman who's, who has a very good chance of not surviving the labor, listen, you're going to die today, but the good news is you're going to, your baby will go on. Well, I don't want it to, but the good news is it's going to. It's a weird thing also. We have to kind of, the whole thing hinges on the question of what is it? And this is why, this is when the philosophers get to come in. So, what's a human being? What's human life? And it really does matter, because if it turns out that that fetuses are human beings, then my goodness, we're murdering millions of babies a year. Hitler's got nothing on us. Man, we get pissed off at Hitler for the concentration camps. Man, we've murdered way more babies than the concentration camps ever killed. If it's not an innocent human being, well, my goodness, prisons are full of people who never should have been born. And I don't mean that in a way. I don't mean that in a eugenics way. I mean that in a way of, there's a tremendous social cost that everybody has to pay. And it isn't just about money, it's about opportunities. Because all of the money and things that get diverted to those areas, imagine what could be done in schools, what could be done in society. It almost seems like we should promote that kind of, it almost seems like we should promote this as a procedure. There's one guy, by the way, who's kind of, interestingly enough, is in the middle. His name is Peter Singer. He's a bioethicist at Princeton. He's, for all intents and purposes, probably the most famous philosopher in the world. And he argues that fetuses are, in fact, innocent human beings. However, he says innocent human beings are not persons. They're not people. He said, according to him, you don't really become an actual person with rights and all that stuff until you have a personality. And he believes that, initially when he wrote his essay on it, he argued that a personality emerges out of a baby at about 18 months old. So what that means is he was in favor of infanticide, killing babies, up until the 18th month, if you wanted to. So you could be sitting there at like the 14th month and just go, change my mind, bang. Because to him, you don't have rights until you're a person. And I won't go over his whole argument, but it's almost frustrating because it makes a hell of a lot of sense the way he puts it forth. You don't think there are lots of contexts in which we don't think of human beings as being persons. They're people, but they're not persons. And of course, he defines what he means by person and all of that. He now has backed that down to 6 months. So, in other words, as we start to learn more about cognitive science and all that, he said, no, it's probably about 6 months or so. Now, you understand that however it is that we come down on these two sides, again, I would implore you, whichever side you're on, be charitable to the other one. Because if you're not being charitable, we're never going to reach any kind of an agreement. We're never going to reach any kind of a livable arrangement. And the other side is not as evil as Instagram and the news try to put other sides out to be. They're not, again, no one's waking up in the morning saying, you know what I mean when I say no one? Maybe there's someone somewhere, but no one's waking up in the morning saying, let's go kill some babies. No one's waking up in the morning saying, let's go control women's bodies. There's a difference of opinion on what this thing right here is. And the reason I find the issue so interesting is not just, I find it interesting because there doesn't seem like there's a lot of middle ground on it, but also how strong of opinions people have and have never even considered this one question. What is it to be a human being? What is it to be a person? What is it to have a life that matters? And so, yeah, I mean, I guess I can leave it at that. And all these other arguments, like, so what to do with a person's body, by the way, it's got nothing to do with the woman's body. The woman's body is kind of like a host, but the fetus has its own body. It's more about this thing. Of course, what complicates it is that this thing is attached to this thing. And that's where these things get intertwined, and that's what makes it so difficult. So it is a hard issue. It is a hard issue, but we treat it very flippantly, and we treat it very angrily in both directions. And it's a weird thing that we treat it flippantly at the same time that we get angry about it. We get so pissed off, but we've never really thought about the issue, and we have such a strong feeling about it. But that's where that is. But by the way, understand when we say like this is if we think like, oh, but this is people who are reacting emotionally. Isn't this an emotional argument? The idea that a fetus is a human being? We shouldn't kill it. It's an innocent human being. Who cares? Well, but it's innocent. I don't give a shit. Otherwise, I mean, because if you are swayed by the fact that it's an innocent human being, then you're being swayed by the emotion of the argument. It isn't just a logical thing. And so we kind of call both sides like, oh, you're just being emotional. Oh, you're just being around. No, they both have intellectual heavyweights on both sides, And they both have strong emotional things on both sides. But here's the thing, that's why it should matter. If you think that human life matters, and you think that a fetus isn't a human being, of course you're passionate about it. If you think that women's rights are being taken away, and that women are going to be subjugated, and then of course you'd be passionate to be arguing against that and be angry about that. Whatever it is that you're thinking, of course it inspires your passions. And I mean, if something that you think doesn't inspire your passions, well, why bother thinking about it? If you have a judge who's on the bench and they're about to rule, of course you want them thinking about the facts, but don't you want them to be passionate about justice as well? Don't you want them to be passionate about people's rights as well? If you got somebody who's, I don't know, solving some, I mean, anywhere you can probably imagine, I can't think of anywhere in the world where you wouldn't want someone to be operating from both of these two things. And so Nietzsche is arguing that he's a person who thinks like this. He's about to describe it. The separation between thinking and feeling has just disappeared. That ideas excite him, the idea of justice, and the idea of maximizing, I would say, overcoming suffering. It's a big thing for him. But that's just, those two things are married. They're the same thing. He's passionate about his ideas, and his ideas inspire passion. It's this circle. If you separate these things out, you say, well, I have an idea, but I'm not really passionate about it. Well, then it doesn't really guide your life. What's the point in having the idea? It should guide your idea. The things that move you in life, there shouldn't be a lot of them, probably, because otherwise you're just going to be an emotional wreck. And what I mean by that is that you're going to find that it's almost impossible to operate in life, because you're going to be constantly swayed around by things that make you angry and sad and all that. So there should be some things, of course, that motivate you emotionally. But there should also be things that motivate us intellectually. As we were saying last time, which should you be? Should you be a thinking intellect, or should you be feeling and passionate? Yes. Yes, you should be both. Because you are both as a human being. And so we shouldn't, whenever I hear someone say, well, hold on, let's think about this rationally. I always think in my head, no, let's feel this passionately. And then we'll do the intellectual thing afterwards. We'll separate, we'll go back and forth between these two things. It's worth considering, by the way, why is it that intellect and thinking gets such a boost in our society, and then feeling and passion get shoved down so much? Who is it who's thinking and intellectual? Who does this? People in power. Who's in power? Us? Shit, we screwed it up. Stereotypically. Who's all passionate, feeling, and not intellectual? Stereotypically.
Women?
Yeah, women. And who's intellectual and thinking? Say it. Say it.
No, I'm just kidding.
Just scan. But there's a thing there. There's a good question of asking. Why is it that we value these things so distinctly? Why is it that we elevate this one and we downplay this one? There's something worth thinking about there in terms of how we treat the sexes in our culture, and how we treat the kind of those innate things that we find. So which one should you be? Well, yeah, you should be both, regardless of which sex you are. You should be both. Even if you have a predisposition towards the other one, that's fine. But round yourself out by being the other one as well. You're probably never going to be completely completely rounded off. Equal between the two. But I mean, passion without thinking can get you to all kinds of crazy, stupid stuff that's going to ruin your life. Thinking without having any kind of passion, it'll get you through life, but man, boring. What are you living for? So, I'm going to stop there, because otherwise I'm going to be here till 9:30.
Sounds nice.
Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques?